Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Harriet B's Daughters channels here on TETV. I'm Nicola Rossini. I'm a co-founder. In just a minute, we're going to bring on Cynthia Sharpe, and we're going to tell you a little bit about Harriet B Daughters and what our organization is, what it does. We founded in 2017, but we just kind of have shown up and have been operating. But just like we did in the industry, we've just sort of shown up here on TETV. So what you're going to see on this channel in the coming months is going to be a hodgepodge. We're going to bring on members and parts of folks from the industry to talk about their experiences getting mentored, how they came into the industry, who the great influences and mentors were in their life. We're also opening this up as a place where people can be kind of content driven. So we've been asked for folks for early career dev. How do we set out a resume? How does that link in with our current LinkedIn? What does everything look like in the current era? If you have an idea, head to harrietbsdaughters.org, shoot it to us. But one of the very foundational parts of our organization is that everyone is a mentor. So similarly, anything that you know that you would like to offer, I'd like to welcome you onto this channel to come and talk with me and the rest of the industry about it. Everyone knows how to do something that someone else is dying to learn. And that's the formation of Harriet B's Daughters. So have a seat, pull up a mug of tea. Cynthia and I are going to tell you a little bit about how Harriet B's Daughters, the Organization for Women Plus and Themed Entertainment, came to be. And if you like what you're seeing, you can come back. You can wait. It's that way to the TETV. You can click on that. Go like our pages. Hit us up in the chat. Let us know about things that you'd love to see more on. If you want me to stop talking and me to bring on somebody else, tell me. If you want to come on and talk, we'd love to have you. So let's see how this went. Hello.
Hello.
Ooh, got to figure out the camera. There we go. It's the reverse of the one I teach on now. Just for fun. So I'm Nicola Rossini. This is Cynthia.
Hi, y'all.
We are the co-founders of Harriet B's Daughters, affectionately known as HBD and most commonly known that way. We are an organization for Women Plus in the themed entertainment industry and wider entertainment at large. And we're just starting a channel here. We're going to fill this with content mostly from our members, but wanted to give everybody a background of who we are, what we started, what we offer. So to my recollection, this started somewhere in 2012, 2013. It was definitely before we ever met.
Right. Yeah, the long, slow lead up along parallel tracks. So having been in the industry for a terrifyingly long amount of time now, I started working in museums formally when I was 22. And by 2012, I'd been at the company I'm at, Thinkwell, for quite some time. I had diversified out from museums. And I was old enough and established enough in the industry that I had a lot of early career folks coming to me, asking questions, looking for mentorship, but also identifying where there were giant knowledge gaps kind of in the industry. Like, I don't even know how this thing over here works, and I don't even know how to find information on how that thing works. And because I function largely as a creative director, I had that mostly from the writer, creative director, art director standpoint. And when I would have folks come to me from more of the project management perspective, I'd be like, I am no use to you. I got nothing. I have no idea how actually building something overseas works. That is not my bailiwick. And there wasn't a good sort of easy access network to kick people to. There were these real cost barriers, whether it was to going to events run by the TEA or getting to go to IAPA, sort of getting access to those networking events and those networks of people. That was not easy.
Yep.
And I think you were running into similar.
I was coming at it from sort of the flip of that. I had come into the industry. I was previously a tour manager and production director for large-scale tours, live events, theater, dance, opera, production things. I'd fallen into that as a teenager and just kept riding that horse. And I was having the opposite problem, which was I would walk in and people would say, we have no idea where to find this talent for production. And I would say, well, that's what I do. I hire people every 8 weeks to do another theatrical show. How do we get them in? But there's always this barrier on the other side of, but you don't know theme parks.
Right.
And we kept asking that question of how different is storytelling really? Particularly for my playwrights who were interested in being creative directors. For folks, I will never forget how hard it was to get a friend who was a Hallmark writer for 5 years, just a basic interview somewhere because it hadn't been theme parks. When really, you know, there's not a better training ground for being able to pitch and move quickly from one idea to the next than Hallmark cards.
Yeah, seriously. We're so precious in our industry about we're so unique. No, we're really not in many ways.
Yeah, I think it was Michael Finney who said on my first project, you know, we're all carny folk from something. We're rides carnies, we're theater carnies, we're carny carnies, like your food carnies. We move along. And that was really proving it out. And at the time that we really connected, I had just come back to the States and was staffing an international project, but we needed some more of that kind of groundwork reach out because we had a lot of fresh talent who was coming in, who it was their first project. And we had a decent top layer of folks who it was their 500th project, but it was that middle ground.
Yeah.
And as somebody in that middle ground, I was like, I don't even know who to talk to.
Yeah.
I talk to myself. I just call people.
There are so few of us in our mutual sort of demographic band. Thank you, 2008 crisis.
That's really, really something that we forget in the industry, and yet we see it coming over and over. That the outside forces inform what's available at any time. Like right now, there's that kind of a gap at that band because anybody who could find a solid job outside of the industry halfway through 2008 took it. And rightfully so, right?
And
like,
rightfully so.
I strung along a whole bunch of contracts and I don't know that I'd do that again. But we're going to see that again after this year.
Yeah.
And one of the real things that we're working on right now is how do we keep people connected?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you and I both, you know, after 2012, 2013, you and I had a very similar experience, which was cresting into 2015 and then the very, shall we say, fractious election of 2016. Two really key things happened. Number one, whereas I'd had a lot of earlier career folks coming to me looking for guidance, I suddenly had fellow mid-career and very disorientingly executive level women, like people who owned their own companies or were vice presidents or SVPs at institutions, like having that career crisis or that work-life crisis and reaching out to me and wanting some coaching. And I was like, I'm looking up at your position. You know that, right? And there was also the real, oh shit moment of what the 2016 election meant for women, BIPOC, LGBTQIA, disabled folks in the workplace. And oh shit, if we don't dig in and do something, the losses we're going to see out of the industry will make 2008 seem like a kindergarten Thanksgiving play level of seriousness. And Trent Oliver at Blue Telescope was in the same boat as me, with folks, her equivalent or executives at bigger companies than hers or what have you, coming to her wanting coaching and guidance, and her being like, there's there's not a network out there for us.
One of the things that always comes to my mind when I talk about this was how often you and I would call each other with folks who it's like, this is not the right person for me to mentor. Are you? And there was a moment, and it was just in that like midway through 2015 point, where at one point we sat and counted, and it was like 60 people that we were, this person had passed to this person, and we were talking. And I think that's, I'm going to take a moment here to mention, we talk about this in our conference settings, but we don't always put this out there. The level of attrition in our industry is mostly at the senior management level. We have a really fantastic recruiting arm that is our parks, that is our events, that is what we do. It's primarily retention that we have a hard time with. To quote the partnership between Netflix and the HBCUs this year, there's not a pipeline problem, there's a plumbing problem. And overwhelmingly, all of the information tells us that the thing that allows people to stay in and to weather these storms and to find healthy balance is other people at their level that they can speak to, that they can be free and candid with. And we just didn't have that. And I'm a production manager by training, so I'm always looking for the scalable answer. And Cynthia and I were not scalable. And I remember that being a very key point where we were already having the discussions of, okay, how do we parse microaggressions for the workplace? How do we parse for these rooms that we're in what the legacy of colonialism means to the area in which we are developing something for? And then there was the tidal wave of, and now it's changing again with what is rocket fuel on the flame of the election, and going, why would any of us stay in this if we cannot stay in together?
Right. Why would anybody willingly hang out in this if it's Eileen Frank, who's the chief curator at Connecticut Historical Society, counsels people. She was on this really amazing panel about women CEOs, executive directors, C-suite in museums. And her biggest piece of advice is make your kitchen cabinet, make your posse, make it when you're young, if you can. And it's going to change and evolve as you go through your career. But even if you all start out as, in our parlance, coordinators or writers or, what have you together, you're going to go down different paths. You're not all going to march along the project management and production path at a giant theme park company. You're not all going to wind up in the same spot. You're going to diversify. And that posse is that group of people who, when you are 42 and director on a project and the cheese is sliding off the cracker in field and you need somebody who can do X and you need them now, you can call that member of your posse who has peeled off and started a fabrication firm or joined as an executive a fabrication firm and be like, I need, who do you have? Who do you know? But that's very individual, your posse. And we're like, we need to scale the posse. We need to make the kitchen cabinet like butler pantry size kind of thing, as opposed to just the overflowing spice cabinet where stuff falls down on your head whenever you open the cabinet doors. And like the actual launch of HBD was very sort of like, shit, let's just do this. Like, wait, a Squarespace site, my credit card, a 12-cup pot of coffee later, and I sent an email to my bosses saying, FYI, I'm doing this on the side, as my finger hovered over the go live button. In perhaps one of my largest examples ever of asking forgiveness and not permission. And they were totally supportive and they continue to be so. And thanks, y'all. But yeah, we hit that point of there's a need. Perfect is the enemy of done. And every day that we don't have this thing is a day that somebody else is banging their head against a wall and potentially leaving the industry.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things, it's one of the biggest lessons of the last year that we're all sort of wrestling with is the biggest struggle any of us ever wrestle with is I must do this alone. Much wellness teaching of varying pathways teaches us that thinking that we're alone in a struggle is actually what causes trauma. It's what makes us feel, it makes us susceptible to abuse. It leaves us in these places. And I always remember it as two things. One, it was the like, well, we're just going to push go and we'll see who shows up. And there were a few folks. And we did the same thing on, we were having those conversations back and forth on how did you learn what a microaggression is? How did you learn to say I'm sorry and that it's okay to just say I'm sorry? How did you learn to talk to somebody about, hey, that's really not okay? And we realized that there's this giant gap because of what was then a slow shift and what has been a massive shift this year to contracting. Often that training comes as part of career development over a long 5 to 10 year arc. It's sideways conversations with mentors. It's lunchroom chats. Where it is codified, it is not things you're even in until you're in a management line training scenario, which many of us don't even qualify for, and even less of us qualify for now that we're not long-term employees. And we just we took our best guess, right? We did the research. We wrote down what we thought were the most important things, and we submitted it to IAPA, assuming we would be resubmitting this every year for a decade.
Times.
And it was not. It was accepted. And for space in the timeline, dear readers, this was 9 months before Me Too. So we had one set of information written. And 6 weeks before the conference, it became something very different.
It became something radically, radically different. Going back in time a little bit from IAPA, when we first launched HBD, we were focused far more on women, and we have expanded to Women Plus because everybody has a role in making our workplaces and our workspaces more inclusive and equitable and accessible. And we identified some sort of big categories of stuff that we kept hearing a need around. It's not enough to be there for each other. That is a huge part of the equation. Helping people not feel alone is a huge, huge, huge part of the equation. And the Harriet B's Slack discussion board, when somebody pipes up with I've got this problem, watching people just weigh in almost instantaneously and help people think through options and present scenario and present help is really, really phenomenal and fantastic. But we knew that wasn't enough. That the network was important, but we also had to help people become empowered and armed to be better advocates in their workplaces. Because the basic math we did with HBD was what we make goes in front of billions of eyeballs. Our industry, alongside film and television, has so much influence on the cultural needle that if we can shift our work products just a little bit towards being more equitable and just, we will have a huge ripple effect. So it was things like providing that network, providing mentorship, and to Nicola's earlier point of scalability, we're still trying to find a better one-to-one mentorship matching solution than Cynthia, 2 stacks of different colors of Post-it notes and a bottle of wine, because that's not tenable at the scale we are now in terms of membership. Resources that people can use in their workplace, helping people with session proposals for conferences that aren't about gender or racial identity or disability, but rather are like, hey, I'm submitting something on VR because I'm a badass at it and it's what I do for my job, so that we're getting more representational panels at these conferences instead of 5 white dudes all in a white button-down navy blazer, dark rinse jeans, and loafers, which is what so many of these look like.
Well, and I think that speaks to something that we hear so often heartbreakingly, I heard it within the last 6 months when a manager had said, I'd really like to make sure that we have a widely equitable pool, and was told, well, that's just not what the industry is. And again, I think we kept having this experience of that doesn't match. That doesn't match who's coming out of programs. That doesn't match who's cold calling us, that doesn't have a background but is interested. That it's a false equivalency, yep. Right? It's a constant spin cycle of, I see these people, so I hire these people because I'm used to these people. But we were missing part of the market. And so that's like, I've seen the difference since we've put out our speakers bench of just having those conversations and getting people out there, and that it's not about which directed programming or month is it this year. It's just, who are all of our experts? Who are all of our subject matter expertise holders at a level who are ready to speak for this? It turns out it's typically a much broader pool than who people are calling.
Mm-hmm. And so many of these conferences, it's, well, who do we know who knows this? Mm-hmm. That's not the best way to get a representational and inclusive set of folks talking. And it's also not a great way to be producing great content, because it means you're hearing, this very similar set of perspectives oftentimes on a panel, and it gets a little echo chambery. But right out of the gate, Clara Rice, Sarah Cole, Tracy Kleiner, all of whom were heavily involved from the get-go with HBD. Clara Rice called it our Do Better World Tour, where various senior HBDers spoke at a variety of conferences, from the SATE at Cal Arts, where I gave the beautiful walled gardens talk, to a massive session that we did at IAPA that Nicola alluded to 6 weeks after Me Too, and suddenly that session took on a whole new flavor, to sessions that folks ran at museum conferences, and then a really big session that we did on the IAPA HR deep dive at the November IAPA conference in Orlando. The HR committee does like a 1.5 or 2 day long intensive, and we got a big chunk of time with that team, and it was really fantastic. But that I would say that at first, and it was particularly obvious when we spoke at TEA's summit, Me Too, Time's Up, What's Next? There was some pretty significant resistance that this isn't a problem. This isn't an issue. Why do I have to sit here and listen to this? Actually ran into people at coffee who were like, this is bullshit, and this is a waste of my time. Did you not read the news?
Well, and it's always that it is always the balance between calling out and calling in. Right? That we find that so often the struggle is we see so many spiraling exponents of the problem, right? And in many ways, we've joked a million times that HBD was just the intersectional Dumbledore's army that we could get started of. Can we give people some basic tools to handle the workspace? Can we get people interacting with each other? And can we give everybody that exposure into these speaking positions and where things are, so that hopefully we can create more space for more organizations? And I think that's a really key thing. HBD was never meant to be the salve to every ill that has been done. It has never, and though we've been called it, we have never signed up to be the diversity police for the TEA. And in part because we don't carry the experience to handle everybody. Right. But we did know that we had the cachet to say, hey, people are being missed. You're continuing to miss them by saying, I don't see them. And you're perpetuating that with this isn't a problem because I don't experience it. Right. And I think so somebody once asked me if some of the other groups that have popped up have bothered me. And I was like, that was the point.
That's the point. That is 1000% the point.
That has always been part of our goal, is that if there's any shelter that our umbrella can give to other folk, We are here to give what we've learned. What does it mean to form a 501c3 while working for a company that actually has made it against your employment contract to be a part of one, is something that we have now navigated. What does it mean to try to make clear to an employer that a group like this with a mentoring project is not a competitor to their mentoring project and is not the solution? Right. That by hiring me into their office or you to come speak and develop, they are not actually fixing their mentoring project. That all of that is internal. We can help connect them to other resources. And often there are many more established groups, but very often what we forget in this industry is that there's more resources than what we know.
Right. And the sad reality is there's so much that's broken and not healthy that no one group could possibly address all of the ills. And it does take many different groups, each of them working away at whatever part of the puzzle is the best for them to work on. It's going to take all of our effort. You know, I look at, let's use voter turnout in Georgia as an example. That shift was not the result of just one boots on the ground group working. It was the result of many, each of them with a specialty focus. And look at the amount of change that they were able to achieve. Same thing for us. You know, we can't be all things to all people. We can't possibly do this work alone. Whatever shelter we can offer under umbrella, lessons learned, expertise, we are more than happy to share. And if somebody comes to us with I need X and I haven't found any group that's doing it, we're happy to listen and be like, okay, we actually do know a group that's doing it, but they're not in our industry or even allied industry, but I'll make the connection for you. And if they don't provide what you need, let's talk about what HBD can potentially do for you. Maybe there's interest in it. You know, we're here to help as much as we can within the boundaries of time and space and spoons and caffeine.
And I think that's something that we're all learning this year, right? That I think the best advice anybody ever gave me is we all think that we're as functional as we were about 5 years in the past and adjusting to our actual physical and mental functionality of where we are today, where our bandwidth is and what is that. And it's been a thing that I see us all struggling with. And that's, again, the goal is to multiply those things. I may not have all the spoons this week. Cynthia may not have all the spoons next week. But again, together we are many. And the more that we have, the more those voices are able to connect. One of the big things that you'll be able to do, I am sure, is click on the HBD link here. That will take you to our website. It looks very boring. We, yes, are in the design business, but this is also on the side, harrietbsdaughters.org. You can shoot us an email that says, I am looking to join. We have a membership form for you to fill out. We have a Slack channel that people join, that they come in on. We are, I'm going to be really honest, we are in the middle of trying to rehab our mentorship program because it is, as Cynthia alluded to, Post-it notes and an Excel sheet at this moment. And it is fundamentally one of the most requested things. And I think what we need to talk about is mentorship takes many forms. And I think this is one of the things that we've noticed a lot since the inception of HBD, is that people are so used to a formalized mentorship process. You sign up for one through your work. Somebody offers to be a mentor to you. And that very often that can take a lot of different forms. That can be as simple as a person who is that ally and advocate within your space, who you can have that conversation with. But very often there's those two primary paths, right? There's coach and there's librarian. And those take very different amounts of energy, but a mentor is probably not the best person to decide that. It's actually, it's a place where we kind of have to go out on a limb and ask to be a mentee. And sometimes that language of, hey, I'm looking for a mentor is what works. And sometimes it's, hey, I noticed you've solved this problem a lot. How do you do that? What's working for you? And I think the thing that we've also noticed is, so in my other world, I'm a coach for a lot of people who are making major transitions. And one of the things we don't talk about is we're going to be in the workspace for approximately 30 years at this point, at minimum, could be as long as 60. You're going to change jobs a lot of times. So your mentorship, who you turn to for mentoring, who that cabinet is, those change over time. And there are a lot of different flavors of that. Most of the mentors in my life aren't of any one background. They aren't even all women or men or all white or all American. They've come from all of these different places. And I think that's the thing that we find people are afraid to interact with, is that you have to kind of keep dipping into the cabinet. You have to keep going back to the cabinet. You have to keep dipping into the pool to find that.
And to that point, while our membership is women plus with a heavy emphasis on women, we do have some men involved with HBD. By and large, they're involved in I need resources, help me learn. I'm in a leadership capacity at my company. I'm in a position at my company where I actually finally have my hands on some levers and I can make some changes. Can you help provide me with resources? Are there ways that I can get involved and be supportive of HBD? Can I share information about HBD at my workplace? Mm-hmm. So that's how they tend to be involved. Mm-hmm. On the mentorship side of things, to echo Nicola, absolutely. And I think one of the most rewarding things about watching HBD over the past couple of years grow tremendously, and I anticipate after this airs it growing yet again, and me sitting there frantically with a cup of coffee and the email on a Saturday morning, is when IAPA meets in person, we have a breakfast. Mm-hmm. And our first year, a lot of the members had very hesitant questions. Should I apply for this job? Does my resume look okay? And there was a lot of coaching and mentoring going on around, absolutely, put in for it, preach. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Let's look at your, helping people with resumes and things like that. And by that, I want to say it was the second year that we've been going, asked everybody at our breakfast, if you got a promotion, got a raise, landed a new job within the past year, throw your hands in the air, stand up, indicate. And fully a quarter of the attendees stood up. And it was the kind of career movement and advancement that I hadn't seen for folks in a really long time. And so knowing that we had helped people develop the confidence and the skills to go out there and get it was just, I can't guarantee you landing a job or landing a better job or landing a raise or landing a promotion, but HBD can help you develop those relationships, which will help get you through the hard times at your current gig, potentially land that new gig, figure out, and just help you figure out that career path. And sometimes the career path, we have members who have left themed entertainment even pre-COVID, but have maintained their membership in HBD because they feel strongly they still have knowledge to give and expertise to share. And they're absolutely right. Everybody's an expert at something. And you can absolutely share that expertise.
Yeah, I've had a number of conversations with people who are like, well, I'm happy to join, but I don't know what I could do. And it's well, have you moved? I can't tell you how often we have somebody who's relocating to a new area and just the basics of, is there somebody else? Where can I get that? There's always the conversations of, I think it's part of what you address on your channel with Wendy. There's awkward conversations around work that come from different bodies that aren't appropriate but you still need to have them. If you are in any way femme presenting and you are taking your battery packs with you into Oman, you will be hauled aside and asked if they're vibrators. That's not a thing that you can always say at work, but it's a great thing that we've been able to kind of pass knowledge from our folks within the groups. We've had a lot of those kind of regional specificities. Where do I find this? It's one thing when you're talking about subs and contracts and vendors for the job. It's another thing about who we are while we live the job.
Here are all the countries where I've been tossed and searched because of my birth control pills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think that's what people forget, that there was a point when you didn't even know how to apply for undergrad, right? Yep. And I think that's
and
one
there
of the
are still people who don't know how to navigate that.
I didn't know at 17 this is what I wanted to do. I had no idea.
I went off and I got a degree. I got 2 degrees in genetics. Clearly, this was at 17. This was not what I was intending to do with my life.
Yep, and I think that's one of the things that HBD has really given me is it reminds me of what I love about the industry. There are so many days where you're ready to quit and just ready to be done with it, and I could have insurance and it would get me healthcare and it would be great. But I can go to HBD and have that conversation and see somebody bragging on. We encourage members to brag. We encourage people to share what they're doing. We encourage people to break that secrecy wall around what they're making, about what their coworkers are making, because we know so often that is what is keeping most of our people from advancing.
And when Nicola says making, we mean money, not violate the NDA and talk about what particular ride you're working on. We've done an awful lot of work around the secrecy around salary and pay equity and total compensation. And that has helped a number of our members tremendously to know their worth and if they are being paid commensurate with their worth or not. I know that we just had the crawl of to get involved. Or to learn more, go to. If you go to that site, you'll see an option for get involved. Click on that. There's a little form to fill out. That will get you into our contact database and it will kick out an email to me. Reminder, I do have a full-time job. So if you fill that out, don't be surprised if you don't get an email back for a couple of hours. But we'll reach out to you and get you signed up on the Slack and shoot you a link to our more involved survey so that we can get to know you a little bit better.
Yep. And we always get this question for our male presenting folks who don't feel comfortable joining or don't want to shoot us an email, but want to know what they can do. The single simplest thing you can do is make sure that the women in your company and around you know what you're making as a salary.
Yep.
Yeah, and you don't want to ever do anything again, start there. We have a lot of other conversations that we're happy to help on navigating those other conversations. One of the big ones that I really appreciated this year is because we're so disparate, because we're, so many of us are in the maelstrom of layoffs and rehirings and moving around this year. We had a number of companies help join together to do a training together because nobody could afford to bring in a trainer themselves. And that's something we're happy to help kind of facilitate. If you're wanting to train your team, but there's only 5 of you, which doesn't quite evaluate a full coach, who can we help put you in contact with? The unfortunate but common thread is the rising tide lifts all boats. And that's what HBD is here to do.
So that's the origin of HBD. It's not a radioactive spider bite.
It's not.
It's too hyper overcommitted already. People being like, I'm dropping the shoulder and going in.
Yep. So on this channel, we're going to see kind of a wide range of things. We've got some folks who are going to chat with us on what got them into mentoring, who their mentors were, what that meant to them. We're also hoping to do a bit more content focused on helping develop what does your resume, we're going to really try to help fill that void. That's always been our goal, right? We can't do it all ourselves. So we're creating a channel to do that. We'll catch you on more. If you think you have a proposal, drop it to to hbd.org.
If
Shoot
there's,
us.
if there's
Yep.
a tool you want in your toolkit that you think would make a great topic for this show, drop us a line.
I'm pretty sure there's nothing that anyone will suggest that nobody else has thought about or needed. And for those who are out doing things, take that moment to think about what would you be willing to be a mentor on? What is that thing that you know? Have you immigrated to the US under a theme park visa? Have you had to go out somewhere? Those are things that we get questions for all the time. And they seem like small personal details, but those are actually the humans who are doing our work. All right.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks. And we'll see you as the month goes on.